Welcome back, creative community, once again to the COACHMC studio. And today we have a special Talks on Acting show where I'm kind of inaugurating something new, a new series where we're gonna analyze the life of some iconic actors, of some legends, screenplay legends and theater legends of the entertainment world, where we can learn from their craft, from their processes and what they did to achieve that greatness. And I couldn't be more happy to kind of inaugurate this first episode with KEIRA DUFFY. She's an actress, an acting coach. She motivates people, has beautiful material where it kind of shows how beautiful and manifold our art can be on so many subtle levels. So I highly encourage you guys to check out her content. We're going to make sure to include all the links, and welcome back on the show.
Hi.
Our mission today is to explore the life of an entertainment industry legend and to dive in his world and his universe, and to learn and appreciate all the incredible projects and things that this person did. And so we were really excited about to get down to this name. Ian McKellen is on the show today, our first legend, our first introspection into this great and magnificent life. And I couldn't be more happy to do it with you. So what you think about this name, and thank you so much for doing this, for sharing also your knowledge and your insights, because you're really you studied a lot of these great people, and I'm sure you can contribute in many ways to this topic today.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited because I'm a huge fan of Ian McKellen. I absolutely love him. I love his work. So yeah, I'm super excited that we're chatting about him today.
Ian McKellen was like a fixed idea of mine also, to kind of look at him a bit closer and to kind of investigate what his craft is about, because he's so mystical, he's so magical. It's kind of like there's some sort of cloud, right, surrounding him and the way he acts, and he's very elegant, but he can also be very strong and very believable and very direct and cruel in a way also. It's so beautiful to watch. So, and I think for creators over there in England, over here in Germany, in Italy, in the United States, everywhere in the world, it's important to kind of decode some of the keys, kind of look closer at some procedures and at some instruments of the craft of these people, because there's so much that we can reverse engineer for our own procedures and how we can play and communicate in a more effective and believable way without forgetting the magic. Because I feel sometimes we always talk about, we have to be effective, audition prep and going there and hitting the bars, right, and hitting the lines and memorize and everything. Yeah, that's all cool. That's all very important technical stuff. But in the end, the thing that really, lights the place on fire is the magic. It is that misty cloud, that undefinable, undefinitionable kind of, madness that is, flickering in the eyes, right?
The magic is when you can't see any of the work, right? You don't want to be able to see that. And so there's all the kind of like technique and stuff which gets you there. But when you watch something and you don't know what's happened, but you just feel and you just believe, there's that electricity. That's the thing that just gets you so excited. It's like it's alive and it's palpable, special.
So on May 25th, 1939, this whole adventure started. Sir Ian McKellen, without being a sir at that point of history, was born in Burnley, Lancashire, right up in the north. His parents, Dennis Murray, his father, and Marjorie, they were very Christian. They were from a lay preachers, kind of part-time preachers background, also some Quakers involved. Very interesting. But it's those Christians that were more inclined of the idea of giving people also and their children more freedom. So they weren't really severe. They just taught them how to follow life in a genuine, sincere kind of Christian way, just respecting everybody and loving and really fulfilling a purpose here on planet Earth. And from the beginning, they could see that there was something about this boy. So at the age of 3, they brought him to the Manchester theater where he saw Peter Pan. And even at this very small age, right, he was 3, he was so impressed. And his parents could, clearly see that he was really affected by what was going on the stage, which was quite unusual, because usually kids, they start kind of, fooling around after a couple of minutes if they're not really entertained, right? They don't really, but he was so affected, so bonded with what was happening. And immediately afterwards, he kind of expressed that feeling of, going more often to the theater, right? And attend those great theater nights. And his parents encouraged him and absolutely supported him.
It's just funny you saying that, because when I was a kid, and I didn't know who Ian McKellen was, but my mom took me to see Peter Pan. Wow. And he was playing Hook. So, and I had I didn't know.
That's great.
And my mom had tickets where we were with a friend as well. Right. And the 3 seats weren't together. There were 2 a little bit further back, and then there was 1 on its own. And in the second half, I was on my own in the seat a little bit forward. And there was a moment where the hook comes out of the alligator's mouth or crocodile's mouth, and it landed on my lap. This is a pantomime, and it landed on my lap, and I was like a little kid, like,
wow, that's crazy. That was clearly a sign. That was something, Absolutely, that was a sign.
And the show kind of stopped for a minute because we were like, needed the hook back, but I had no one I knew around me, so I was just
because we were totally isolated, right? We were alone.
Yeah, and I was a young kid, and so I think people next to me probably helped me give it back in the end. That his character died at that point. His hook was coming out of the mouth, but Ian McKellen was playing Hook in that production. Yeah. So
how was it? You remember?
Yeah. Well, he played Peter Pan's dad and Hook, so it's kind of like a nice synchronicity. It was like a special memory for me as a kid.
Yeah, because I think Peter Pan is very telling. If you understand what Peter Pan is actually really about, and I'm sure like in the way his parents and everybody like described how he was affected by that play, I'm sure he really understood some of its core message, right? It's not just the entertaining aspect that's so fascinating about that play, because it has, it's almost like mythological. It kind of triggers something inside of yourself. If you really understand Peter Pan, it's like waking up from the Matrix in a way. It's kind of understanding, okay, what the relation to yourself, the magic is. And this is one of those plays that kind of, they travel with you and they evolve with you. And so it's very interesting that was his first encounter with theater, that idea of letting go, absolutely, right? And trusting your instincts and just reaching somewhere where it's magical, because I feel that is what happened throughout his life. He was just playing Peter Pan all the time. He had always this childish, foolish, kind of glimmering, funny look. Whenever you see the Ian McKellen close-up, you always have the sensation that there's always kind of a note of humor kind of swinging, right? There's always kind of something funny, kind of amusing swinging with it, even if it's totally serious. And it's not throwing you off. It's still very believable. Whatever he's trying to express is absolutely on point, but there's always something kind of funny and humorous about it. And so maybe,
I agree. There's a twinkle in his eye.
There's a twinkle. I think that's the Peter Pan twinkle.
I think you're right that there is always that kind of spark.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's a sense of almost like knowing, like a little secret.
Yes,
or something.
That's very good. I agree.
There's this depth, right?
That he's
this, like,
actually just playing, that he's just playing like Peter Pan, because Peter Pan knows already, it's just a game, right? Everybody's taking it so seriously. No, I'm just playing. I know that it's important. I'm not letting myself getting confused and seduced to walk that slippery slope, right? I'm gonna stay focused and very easy and very soft, right? I'm not gonna slip. Yeah, he started going to the theater world, and he also in school, when they moved to Wigan, kind of a small mill town in England, he attended also the local theater company, the Marlowe Company, what they call them, and he was playing there as an amateur actor. And then later on, when he went to St. Catherine College there at Cambridge University, he was 18 years old. He was studying English literature and drama and all that, but already there, he also enrolled into the local theater group. He was always playing. He was always watching theater plays. He was always there in the audience room. He was, I think, very thirsty. Once he caught fire with that Peter Pan, from there on, he created this very thick bond with the theater world, with Shakespeare especially. his parents weren't really against it. It's just, I think at a certain stage, he really didn't believe he could make it. So that's why he was also studying, you know, most of the time he was just focusing on English literature and drama, right? But then at a certain point, he realized, no, I have to make that transition. I have to perform. That's what I want to do, you know? And then he started the theater world for real. And I think his first role in theater that was in Bolton, it was Malvolio. It was in the 12th Night. And so that also is very telling if you think about it.
Yeah, that's a fun one. It's a just a fun character to play with, I can imagine, and brilliant comedy.
Yes, it is brilliant comedy. Absolutely. It's like Frodo, right? The way he says, like, nothing bad, right? Just he gives different accentures that are really small, and he does something with the words that I think comes from this very heavy Shakespeare background that he can manipulate and put it. It's like classical music. If you study classical music, you can compose pretty much everything. You can go out and do rap, techno, whatever with classical music. And Shakespeare is also like one of the universal keys to kind of understanding theater and speaking and acting in a powerful way. And so this thing kind of stayed with him, right?
One of the things that I think of with Ian McKellen that I think is so magnificent and powerful is his voice. He is one of those actors, and this is, you know, you have different things that we all love in an actor, right? And one of the things that I love is, and it always comes with these grounded voices, is I'm always like, they could say anything, and I would be like, wow, I would believe them.
Yeah,
I would be like, that's so truthful, and it could be the most mundane thing, and I'm so enraptured, and I trust what they're saying. It's the quality of the tone. There's something in the sound that makes you believe, and I think also, like you said, the kind of ability to, the way you just said fickle there, was exactly right. There's like this playfulness of like using the consonants, using the vowels in a way that sound is I think just as important as the language, and that
absolutely,
I think come from a classical training.
Absolutely, the sound is way more important than the words. Sound is way, if you sound great, like you just said, it really doesn't matter what you say. You can sell pretty much anything. If your body language, if your posture is right, and your sound is outstanding, you got 75% of the sales covered already. The words, they're not important. In drama school, I'm not sure. Like sometimes the trainings, they vary incredibly. What we had to do is like read instructions, manuals, and journals, like very mundane and banal stuff, and read it out in a way that it touches you, right? As if that contains some emotional quality or like a chord that's important. And so you had to kind of imagine what this manual, this instruction actually could be, right? What kind of message it could be to the audience, and create that emotion out of those lines, like, insert this and then just pull the screw and just let it, but you had to do it in a way that it touches you.
I love that. I'm going to play with that.
It's a great training, and believe me, it's super hard, as you can imagine. It's really not easy to kind of pull that off, to read those things that really don't mean anything to you, just vectors and numbers and just data, right? Mundane stuff that really it's just a piece of furniture or whatever, like an instruction manual for an iron. It's like, and you have to build it. You have to believe it. That's the magic we're also talking about today on the show. Like, learn from those legends. Learn, because they have like an anomaly. They have a way of approaching something that is mundane and banal in a way that is totally extraordinary. They put something remarkable in a totally normal container. And that is the trick, because they're not competing with anybody. They are creating an ocean for themselves.
I want to like stew over what you just said there. Creating something extraordinary and putting it into something ordinary, did you say? Or
yes, completely normal. You switch the principle, because it's way more surprising. And if it's surprising, then it immediately connects, because the audience craves for more. They want to know how this is possible. that was also so extraordinary about Peter Sellers. And studying his life, I could also understand his madness in his performances, because his childhood, his youth, his growing up was crazy. It was just madness. Here, Ian McKellen is exactly what his childhood and his life also in the younger years looked like. He's way more relaxed and way less crazy and way less, irrational in his acting and performing choices, because the way also he was brought up was pretty tranquil, even though he was born before World War II. It was 1939. It wasn't like an easy time for the parents and moving around like everybody did. But I hear so many stories exactly from that period in history where so many great talents were born and new great ideas were forged. So I guess, part of the history of art has always been this truth that art needs some sort of scarcity. There's like an inner scarcity, an environmental scarcity of something needs to be difficult for the creator, for the artist. Only then he comes up with a solution. Only then something blossoms up. If he has too much money, too much time, if he's too wealthy, or he's too prosperous. I'm not saying that rich people can't create art. There are rich people who make great art, but most of the times it comes up, right? It shoots up from some sort of fertile soil. It's not already established. It's not taken over by heritage. So it's forged always in these crazy times. But his parents, they managed to kind of bring him through very securely. He, at the age of 18, he kind of attended St. Catherine College, Cambridge University. And then in the 50s, he started playing extensively theater. In the 60s, he started getting to professional theater plays in Coventry at the Belgrade Theater in 61. He started also with his first professional performances. And the funny thing about the natural and spontaneous way of he was acting, it really didn't stem off any acting education. He was studying English literature. Of course, he practiced a lot because he attended pretty much all the school plays in all of the schools he went to. He always, applied for the local theater group and everything. But he created his acting education for himself.
It's interesting because I didn't remember that he'd gone to Cambridge. But Cambridge has turned out a lot of actors, not necessarily studying acting. Mm-hmm. I think there's a big, a strong acting community there. So I'd forgotten that. I'm sure I must have known at some point. But also interesting to mention about you mentioning where he was geographically and where he moved to, and I think, and we've been talking about The Voice, and his accent changed.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's
he
probably
even said that in an interview. I remember he saying
that. He mentioned it because he had a northern accent, and he's got an RP accent, which is more of a southern accent. And I think that's kind of a sign of the times, like RP, especially with classical theatre. I think everyone's spoken an RP accent, so it's kind of like very posh, basically. You're kind of ironing out any kind of nuances that your own accent has to speak in this kind of very classical way. Whereas today, different accents are welcomed so much more into theatre and a classical stage as well. So it's interesting to note kind of that change. And also kind of ties in with all the vocal work that was probably done at that time to, one, with the accent, but also have this really booming, powerful classical voice.
Absolutely. A very resonating, he has this way of resonating. That frequency that he emits is really kind of, it's strong. It kind of holds you. Right. No, he's a absolutely fascinating actor. And his very soft, almost humble demeanor when he's acting, right? He's not enforcing anything. If you think about Klaus Kinski, right? Klaus Kinski enforces his act upon you. It's fascinating. It's very entertaining. It's hard sometimes. It's okay. Sure, that's his way. But sometimes when you enforce things too much, your brain kind of, holds back and guards off, right? And pulls back from you because it wants to, you know, certain barriers needs to be defended. And the way in McKellen, he's almost luring you in.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a difference between an energy, which is, like you said, meeting the audience, coming out, and an energy which is like draws you.
Why don't you come in, my friend? I got this little nice room here for you, right?
Absolutely.
It's very smart. That's what I want to say. It's very smart. He knows exactly what he's doing. Because like we already established, the way he changes his tone, his rhythm, the way he accentualizes something, that means he's playing, he's controlling that actively. Maybe it's his muscle memory because he's doing it now for 60, 70 years. Okay. But in the beginning, I think it was kind of structured and planned and executed actively.
I think there's space. And I think that is like a really important tool for an actor, of allowing the audience space to fill up in you, sometimes the emotions or what they see in you, not having to push it out. And I think he gives space. There's always that there's always an aliveness, because like we both said, that glimmer, that twinkle in his eye, always active, but it gives you space to see deep into it as an audience. So you're so invested.
That's so good. Yeah, I agree.
It's really powerful.
It is. It's frightening sometimes even. It's so good because it's so relaxed and he's allowing it.
So relaxed.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, my friend. Just come in. I think through his theater upcoming and playing in these, you know, different theaters, and then eventually he started also at the Shakespeare Company, but in 65 he was at the West End Theater, but it was, you know, fairly small roles, nothing really exciting. He was known, but he was not a star. He wasn't super popular at that time. 65 he was still, you know, being there and, you know, getting known. But in the 70s, everything changed. He had changed. In Edinburgh in 69, he had this great success, and then kind of immediately he gained access to the Shakespeare Company. And imagine like acting with people like Sir Laurence Olivier and Miller and Ralph Richardson and all these people. I mean,
that
he was surrounded by back then, I think was very powerful. Coming up with these actors then in the 80s. He had some magnificent plays, and then he became like
such a different sorry
no absolutely no it was completely different back then. It was wild, it was crazy, it was politically incorrect, it was, you know, experimenting also, and at the same time it was this classical theater upbringing and all that. So it's a beautiful kind of high quality mixture.
I think something that he's spoken about is rep theater. So repertory, where, you know, you have a company and it's the same company doing different shows, like 2 different shows at the same time maybe, and then you have a season doing some shows, and then the same company has a season. And I think that's really where he got a lot of his training. And you know, that cohort of actors who are all incredible classical actors and have transitioned into being amazing film actors, were in repertory theatre together, and that doesn't exist very much now. I think there's only a couple of theatres that still have that, whereas that was kind of the way, I think that was the norm. Most cities, that's how things worked, whereas now you kind of just got one show and go away. So it was a nice kind of training ground, I think, at that time.
Over here in Germany, we had something pretty similar also in Berlin and in the bigger cities, where it was actually just some sort of open workshop. People just could go there and perform and speak and exchange. Like the whole building was packed with strange and creative people, and you had many spots like that all over the city. Now it's so clean and so posh, and so it's not real anymore, right? They brought it.
That sounds amazing. That sense, that place of having somewhere you can go for consistency, because I think as professional actors, when you're outside training, that is one of the biggest struggles for actors. Is where do I go to be with a group of people where I'm constantly growing, where I'm constantly learning, where there's a consistency that comes along with it.
Absolutely. That's something we're saying at the COACHMC studio the whole time. Guys, girls, people, creative community, you need to train. constantly and steadily. You need to search out for the challenge. Don't wait, next to your phone and just watch movies, or just train your craft, explore yourself, right? Listen to yourself, try to add always something to your product. But in the end, if we look also at, at a legend, like what we're doing today, like learn from legends. What is so legendary about Ian McKellen? In your opinion, what is so legendary about him?
That is a good question. What is so legendary? For me, I think it's this gravitas, this larger than life presence, but also kind of really speaks to you on an individual level. He has this like ability to be so grand and so big, but you feel like he's talking to one person. And I think he does it so well as Gandalf.
Gandalf is amazing.
So, I mean, roles like that are so hard, and you've got to be a wizard. Whenever he's talking to either Frodo or Bilbo,
it's very gentle and personal,
grandness,
right?
But it's so personal. Yes. And that carrying those two things
as if he would know that he doesn't need to speak with his ego. So he makes it visible for the audience to perceive that now he's just pushing everything aside that is so grand and so magnificent about his character, because actually his core is just a lonely old man that has fun talking to a lot of different funny creatures and enjoys his life, right? That the grandness of making that switch visible, and then also returning the big wizard that fights against the Balrog, where he clearly kind of pumps up, then this is amazing. Absolutely. By the end of the 80s, he was this popular face in theater, and then he's transitioned to movies began. He started with smaller roles, and in 98, he had this role of an ex-Nazi in a film by Bryan Singer, who went on to, shoot X-Men. And Bryan Singer, he immediately kind of discovered him, right? He gave him this very cool role, which was a leading role, his first leading role for a cinema for a feature. Afterwards, he made sure to kind of, get into the X-Men material, which was crazy, because if you think about it, you're saying something very fundamental right there about his legendary skill of appearing even larger than life and being so grand. Because Magneto in the comic books, the source material, if you look it up, Magneto is built, he's structured, he's strong, right? He's a comic book superhero, he's a villain. And Ian McKellen is very skinny, he's a thin guy, right? And also, a bit older. But Bryan Singer never doubted, even for a second, that he could pull that off, like to kind of represent him flawlessly and be so credible as an antagonist to a group of so super powered characters like Wolverine and all these. You really could believe that he was a match for them, right? So probably the friendship with Patrick Stewart started, and he was then his best man, and also at his wedding they did Broadway shows together, and of course at the Shakespeare Company. But that's where his movie career kind of took off.
Yeah, I think what you said there was so interesting, and I've never really thought about it in that way, of how he is the villain competing with not even one superhero, but a group of superheroes.
Bunch of crazy.
And you totally believe that he could be a threat to them.
Yeah.
I think it's super impressive whenever an actor takes a role, a comic book character, and gets that level of power, either someone you revere or someone you fear, but also makes them human. And so they're not just an archetype, they're not just a kind of cliche of someone, but there's like depth to that person. And I think that's a difficult thing to want to play into an archetype, but also have a core, have this humanity in you. And I think he completely gets that.
Because that's Shakespeare. Because all the Shakespearean characters are superheroes. They are freaking superheroes.
Right. You're right.
They're so much larger than life. They have so much power over life and death, over blue and red, over being revered or being feared, like you just said. And they are human at their core. Yeah, this little boy and this little girl, right? And they desperately want, they wanted to be loved, or they're scared of something. And out of that composition, they did the things they did in those plays. And I think that's why Bryan Singer immediately like saw, yeah, he's it already. That's exactly the craftsmanship that I need, that Shakespearean classical craftsmanship, there's already the superhero. There's nothing, I just put on a nice costume and he's totally believable. He's a real threat. And then he got a role that was meant for Sean Connery, which is Gandalf, right? And Sean Connery couldn't read all the Tolkien. Yeah, it was Sean Connery who refused to play Gandalf because he refused to read all the Tolkien material and all the source materials. It's just too much, right? Right. He said, "Oh, Peter, you got to understand. I got to play goal. I got to shoot dogs. I can't read all this, right? I'll play you Gandalf, but I'm not reading."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he turned that role down. Sean Connery turned it down. He accepted. And I think he kind of made the next step, because Gandalf, if you read the source material, I venerate and love Tolkien dearly. And I don't know how many times I read Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion and all that. And it's just incredible stuff. It's a real mythology. People don't get it nowadays. Like when they say, don't be so, no, it's not just literature. It's a canon. This is real source material. And it was intended to be seen as such, because that's what he said. It's chronicles of Middle Earth, right? It's not a novel. It's not really fiction even. It's something that goes way deeper. It's mythology. It's modern mythology. And I mean, he studied out, I don't know how many languages. He got into writing his own dictionary, and you got to respect that amount of work. And plus it is so beautifully shaped that, like Shakespeare, Tolkien has this multi-universal application to it. It's so much primordial in the ways of he's speaking of the characters and their traits and attributes. It's so, you can totally relate to that. It could be a mythological Greek, a classical character. It could be a Sumerian, Babylonian god. It could be so much, right? You can always exchange because they are so coded in such a beautiful way that it's timeless. And it stretches on this great culture. And so it was, again, he was prepared already to do it, because already he had Magneto in his chest, like a super villain, and he could interpret then the super good guy. And Gandalf in Tolkien's literature, it's a demigod. It's a Maya in the Tolkien universe. Someone who was made to bring light, and it's the gray, it's the Lloyd. In Wales, you call him a Lloyd, a gray man, a wise man.
Wow. Yeah. I'm going to have to read the books. I read The Hobbit so many years ago, and I never read Lord of the Rings. So it's a good reminder of reading.
Read it, because it's like Ian McKellen. It's so soft, it's so gentle, it's so elegant, but it kind of sucks you in. And there are so many layers to it. It's so beautifully executed. Every word in this book is exactly where it needs to be. People dare to touch this material and criticize it and pull it into strange corners. People should pay respect to such a beautiful and detailed and really passionate work. Like in today's literature, the things that I see, right, where interpunctation and all that, it's just random stuff. There is no, the story sometimes, and these people coming out there, and here is somebody who really placed every word exactly where it needs to be. That resonance, that sound, that's exactly Ian McKellen's voice. That's why Peter Jackson knew exactly, that's my man. Then with him, I will win. And he did. I mean, Gandalf is just amazing. It's just, I always get goosebumps. I don't know how many times I saw the movie and the backstage and the B-rolls.
Yeah, I've watched them. I've watched them a lot too. I have to admit. I mean, there's so many. I mean, obviously, Thou Shalt Not Pass, iconic moment in cinema.
And that's improv. In a way, it's improv how he did it. Yeah, it's not completely the way it was scripted.
I mean, magnificent. And that scene, it's such climax, right? It calls for this big moment, and we know at that point watching the films that Gandalf is powerful, but we've seen bits and pieces, but this is the biggest threat they faced.
The
And
Khazad-dûm.
then this is the moment where we see the wizard coming into his power.
Yes.
That's a tall order, and it is just as magnificent and as wonderful and as large as you could hope. You truly believe, like, whoa, look at that wizard. And there's no ounce of pushing, which is incredible. No ounce of pushing. It's just from the gut, isn't it? That voice sort of.
You described it wonderfully. Yeah, it is exactly that. It's no pushing. Again, it's actually luring in. And even though he was kind of, facing off that Balrog, which is like a minor demon, right? It's one of the demons of shadow and fire, how Tolkien describes them, by, created by Sauron when he was serving his lord Melkor, right? And he had this army, and this is not even the most powerful one. Gandalf there did something amazing, right? There is a line, and that line you can't pass. And right, this is the line that I draw now, bam.
Yeah.
And that is so spot on. It's incredible. It really shatters you.
It does. You just all eyes on him, all focus in that moment in the film. And his focus, I think we've spoken about his voice, but I think his focus is also so powerful. There's this boundary. And obviously there's not really a demon there, So all of that CGI and green screen and having that level of precision and focus of the steam coming at him, so that whenever you see an actor that's that focused on something, you can't help but be focused on them. When someone is sees something, you're like, what do you see?
Right.
And so yeah, it's so focused. You can feel this power coming towards him, and him being so clear that there's this line here that he said. It's amazing.
It is amazing, as you just mentioned. I mean, it's one of the new kind of challenges for actors, right? Acting in front of a green screen and just imagining all these people, these crazy creatures and all that you just saw, basically on a drawing beforehand. It's like, okay, I'm imagining this being there now. That's very easy. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. No problem. And he's doing it like, it's so believable. It's like a character. Yeah. And like you said, also like the way he's talking to the hobbits and everything. Imagine in the movie, he always had to kind of, look at a different angle. It wouldn't work actually when he would pick the original size. So he was never looking at somebody, directly, nobody into his eyes. So he was never facing actually an actor, even though he had to play some very dramatic and intimate moments. So that makes it even more difficult to express, because there's nobody there. The actor was standing down there, but he had to put it in here.
Incredible.
It is amazing. All his preparation, all his life, all his childhood, kind of brought to this moment, and we're seeing a pretty late blossoming up. So this is also a message to the actors out there, to the young guns, to the people who are struggling to make ends meet and maybe thinking about bailing and exiting acting or taking a break from acting or whatever. If you have that type of passion and that fulfillment whenever it comes down to acting, it's because you love it dearly and deeply, and then you should follow it, and then believe that whatever you put in the right amount will also come out. And there is no instant gratification when we're talking about a career, because simply things don't happen immediately just because you showed up. It needs some time, because people need to, they need to get an idea of who you are, of your product. They need to see you more often and remember you and kind of associate moments of their lives with the image of the actor and what he said in that play or that moment in the movie, or when he said that line, or when he sang that song. And that needs to kind of trickle down, and it just takes time to do that. You can't always ask immediate response just because now you entered the stage. Just let time do his work and believe in your passion and in this traction that you get by exercising and contributing to the culture and also leeching from the culture back and forth. And then eventually the right roles, they will appear, that will pop up. If you think about Ian McKellen's career, of course it was great already in the 80s, but really it started in the 90s. And so that means it took him like 50 years.
That's such an important message for older actors as well, because I saw one of your videos, which is about, I saw the title saying, "Am I too old for acting?" And I think it's also really important to kind of share a message that, you know, like you can start any time with acting, and definitely it doesn't have to only be a young pursuit. And I think something which is also really magical about Ian McKellen is you really get the sense that he is an actor that loves the craft. He loves acting, he loves the theatre. And I mean, that's been exemplified in the shows that he's done in recent years. For his 80th birthday, he did a one-man show touring the whole of the UK and all sorts of different theatres. And I went to see one of them, and actually he had proper fangirl moment. I'd written a letter. I was like, I'm going to give him a letter.
You really did that? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And we were walking out the main foyer, and they were collecting money after us, and he was there in the foyer with a bucket collecting money. And I think
that speaks for itself, right?
And the money he was collecting was for theatres in the UK. And he's someone who I don't think has followed this path for acclaim, for fame, but really from a place of loving the craft. And just today, I saw that it's been announced that he's going to be doing a show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I think that also says a lot about the mindset of becoming so great. I'm really
jealous. You saw him a couple of times already. That's impossible.
Yeah. Oh, I told you about Hamlet in Windsor. He was playing Hamlet, and I got a seat on the stage, which I was so excited about, which was so nice to see someone who I've loved, obviously. You can tell by my excitement.
Oh, really? Yeah, it didn't cross my mind.
Yeah, and to see them performing in front of you that close up. And one of the things that was truly astounding was how physical an actor he is. And obviously you see it differently in film, but it was such a physical performance. Also, just the way that he would kind of catch the lines, this sense of searching for the words before they came, sense of the immediacy of not knowing what you're about to say, the connection of the breath to searching for things, I thought was so interesting.
Yourself the time to explore it instead of just pushing for the word or the line.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem automatic or automated. And when with Shakespeare, of course, it's that rhythm and stuff, but it all seemed fresh,
artificial. Yes, yeah. It's like Chopin. You have to play it as if it comes out in this very instant, as if it wouldn't be preconceived. Just eliminate the idea that you just rehearsed this for 8 weeks. It needs to be done right now. It's a great challenge, and that's like what you're describing. That's very precious, and it speaks for itself. And it's also, I think this is a sound that and something that needs to be perceived also by the creative community here on YouTube. I mean, we love the digital space and the era and all the possibilities and the freedom and the way that we can explore things, and what we're doing right now is so beautiful and manifold. And by all means, of course, we should pursue that, because that's creative as well. But going to the theater, going to the movies, going out, dressing up and feeling that energy, and maybe also participating and really being there, right? In all of his life, Ian McKellen attended, I don't know how many thousand theater plays. For him, it was easy to replicate because he was absorbing it. Talking again about the muscle memory. If you are part of the culture, you're already in there. You don't need to put on so much because it's already in there. You don't need to search for so many because you already absorbed it. There's already an exchange happening. If you watch thousands and thousands of theater plays and then talk to the actors, you're there. You're exchanging the energy, the information, and the data. You are like this container, and you're getting filled up by being there, because it's just like standing under a waterfall.
I think that's fantastic advice. It's so true. The more you're around and it's a certain type of energy, the more you see certain things come up, you kind of through osmosis start to get an understanding or grow in a way that you're sometimes not even consciously doing. So if you have that unconscious with the conscious,
then it's magical. And it's very interesting also what you said about him, like being very impressive also with his body language and having this great body speaking for him, and these actions very truly believable. Because again, like here at the COACHMC studio, we always say you need to do it, you need to love it, and you need to act upon it. So there is a voice, there is a passion, there's like this inner core, and there is your body. These are the three elements. If you combine these elements and you refurbish and polish them continuously to almost perfection, then you get this triangle, this force, and then you become a truly outstanding performer, like a great actor. And here we see the same thing. He's got a great voice, great sense of rhythm, great way of manipulating the words, extending, stretching, shortening, compacting, like he wants on the spot, right? He changes the flow and makes certain things that are fickle and mundane, makes them important, and important things, he kind of plays them down and reduce them completely. So he kind of, you know, flips with these forces. Then he has this eye, right? When he contacts you with very piercing, very playful eyes. So it's kind of cold and hot at the same time, right? He can he can be a little child, but he can be also very powerful and very impressive.
There's a moment in one of the Hobbit films, like you'll probably know which one, after Bilbo has first picked up the ring, escaped from somewhere, and then he turns up, and Gandalf sees him, Martin Freeman, playing with the ring before putting it in his pocket. There's just like a close-up on Ian McKellen's face reacting to that, and he just flick of the eye of this recognition.
No, I exactly know what you mean. Yeah, I remember that scene very well, because I was very impressed by that. Very quick, very impressive, very sharp look. It was telling so much. It wasn't just because it was sharp, because it was very deep, very telling, because he recognized immediately on what path. He already saw the future. You could kind of see, all right, this is
the dots. Right. Yeah. And I actually think I was watching it with my dad this one time, and we both were like, whoa. Yeah. Did you just see that moment? Because he just got so much across in a flick of an eye, in an eye movement. And like you said, there was so much depth to it. That's masterful.
I can't believe he didn't, you know, win the Oscar for Gandalf. Is it possible? Because that's such a skillful, craftful, beautiful, elegant, passionate, just it's a masterclass. It's a 3-hour movie. You believe everything. He's fighting, he's whispering, he's smoking, he's high, he's singing, and then he's like conjuring demons. It's no problem. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that before in my life. It was like watching Star Wars for the first time in a movie theater. It was so impressive. Like, oh, this is something new. This is like really being in this fantasy world, also through his eyes. Of course, I'm a huge Tolkien fan, Lord of the Rings, and everything, but I was so afraid of this not working out, and so afraid of this not really being believable. And
especially if you love the source material that much. It's
exactly, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the way Peter Jackson adapted, there were some choices, compromises you had to do, but I'm not judging that. It's just the way you bring it out. He didn't change what the source material effectively was about. There was such a deep love for Tolkien. It was so evident. So you wouldn't kind of some of his choices, but Ian McKellen interpreted and incarnated that light spirit, that moon spirit, that radiant spirit of Tolkien so well. And then, of course, he had also Christopher Lee, Peter Jackson, who was the Tolkien scholar, who's one of the greatest actors of all time as well. This Dracula, this dark force as Saruman. Actually, he was intended to be Gandalf. He wanted to play Gandalf like badly, Christopher Lee. And then, but this, you know, they just convinced him like, you are perfect for Saruman.
Yeah, I mean, the two of them together were amazing.
Ian McKellen got awarded with 50 international acting awards throughout his life and his career. Was nominated 2 times for the Oscar, I think 4 times for the Golden Globe and whatnot. But not giving him the Oscar for Gandalf, it's just, I don't know what's going on. If that's not perfection in acting, I don't know what perfection is. This is what we should also not only, but also teach in acting school or in, you know, in drama school, because this is, I mean, it's just a masterpiece. It's like Johann Sebastian Bach. You know, you listen to this and it's like, what? It's like Glenn Gould playing the Goldberg variations, you know, you name it. It's just those virtuoso moments of any art, of any craft, that leave you speechless. Like the way he interpreted Gandalf is just incredible. It is what it is. I don't think it bothered him that much, even though I believe inside of himself, he kind of thought of getting that Oscar, because there was just nobody better at him in competing that year and all the other years when he was playing Gandalf. But in the end, he could understand, like what you are saying, he understood. Like people are still not perceiving fantasy as being something realistic in a way that it's, oh yeah, okay, if I play a character in a fantasy movie, then it's not Oscar worthy, because of all the options, or of the crazy world, or the, you know, the imaginary world that is kind of creating that fantasy universe, that the immeasurable you know, chances of interpreting that might seem like a too easy pick, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's so hard to interpret something so imaginary, so crazy, where so many choices are possible. And I think we don't give enough praise to Peter Jackson, his wife, and all the incredible, devoted and dedicated, hardworking people of Wingnut Film, the workshop down there, because it's just crazy what they did. It's just crazy because they were able to put that feeling in to the reading and to the, you know, and to the actors. They were kind of rooting and spawning out that Tolkienism, that intrinsic love for that literature, and every aspect and every detail was kind of transmitted to all the actors, and everybody was kind of cross-polluted. You could see it in every actor's eyes, in the extras. Everybody was knowing exactly what they were doing, and I think that's Peter Jackson's and his wife's merit, because they were kind of spawning that out all the time and giving them information and details and directions and drawings and so much love and so much passion. Really big up to these three films. They're just amazing.
And I think you had to have a lot of faith, I imagine.
Yeah,
in your director,
absolutely.
to just say, to trust what it's good, because you can't see it. I mean, as an actor, you can never really see the whole picture because you're in it.
Right.
So you have to trust, right, what someone, the director with an outer eye, says to you from what they can see from their perspective, because you can't control it when you're in it.
No,
you can't try to control it.
You need that trust. Yes,
you need that trust, and I can imagine how amplified that is in a film like that, where there's so many gaps in the visuals, to have that trust to just kind of and say, this is what serves that moment, so I'm going to go with what you say. It's amazing.
Where every shot and every setup is super expensive, and you know, sometimes you need to rebuild stuff when it goes wrong. It's a really crazy. Like the pressure is high, and doing this for so many years and being able to transmit that feeling, what this is all about, and you know, gathering all these people, and that fire bundle never went out, and that's so beautiful about this film, and also about the craft that we're still have the pleasure to enjoy from Ian McKellen. His fire bundle is still on, his humor is still on, his eyes are still kind of transmitting and flickering, and there's always like this Peter Pan when it all started when he was 3 years old, and now he's recognized as being one of the greatest actors of all time. And that's, I think, a title that he fully deserves, absolutely, for his work, for his craft, for the love of what he's doing, for the humble person he still is, and a funny person he still is, and fighting in so many different fields for justice and a good cause, and never giving up on certain aspects of his personality. And also his coming out was at a very early stage, and so he fought for that freedom as well, where it wasn't so granted, and he talked about that openly, where it wasn't kind of, you know, supported by a large group like it is now, and where it wasn't so popular to be, you know, in the limelight in this way. I think, like, big up to him and to his career, and there's so much that we can learn, the way we interpret with our voice, the way we interpret with our eyes, the smoothness and the clearness of our body language, of our behavior, the way we are setting our lines and what we're saying, and when we manage to kind of decrease and increase the intensity of our play in such a flawless way. There's so much that we can learn from this legend, and I couldn't thank you more for being tonight with us on the show. It took us, I mean, we kind of lost time a little bit. I'm sorry, I took a lot of time from your busy schedule.
Yeah, I've had so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, KEIRA. And absolutely, creative community, make sure to check out KEIRA's work. Contact her. She is an amazing person, a great teacher, and such a sensitive and such a knowledgeable person and human being. I couldn't be more excited to have this talk and learn from the legend Ian McKellen all together. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much, creative community. If you watched so far, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, right? Just activate the bell, because then you know every time we grind out new content. Subscribe also to my Instagram account and also to hers, where it's Acting with KEIRA. Over here it's the COACHMC. And if you got any other question, any other remarks, any other comments, leave it in the comment section below, or contact me for a free 30 minutes free trial lesson where we kind of find out if we're a good match for each other through my website. It's the coachmc.studio. See you next time with the next Talks on Acting. Thank you so much, Sir Ian McKellen, for all of your movies, for all of your great interpretations. Thank you so much for having impacted us throughout the ages, and please continue to do so as long as you can. Thank you so much, KEIRA. Thank you, dear community. See you next time. Now you're ready to perform. Bye-bye.